The smell of honey-glazed ham filled Mom's dining room, but all I could taste was the bitterness of another family gathering where I was the punchline. "So Emma," Aunt Carol said, passing the scalloped potatoes. "Still playing with your little phone app?" I was 31 years old. I'd been the chief technology officer and co-founder of HealthTrack, a medical data analytics platform. We just closed our Series D funding at a $2.1 billion valuation. 3 weeks ago, I'd signed the paperwork for our IPO, going public on the NASDAQ the Tuesday after Easter weekend. My family knew I did something with apps. That was it. "Something like that," I said quietly, reaching for my water glass. My older sister Lauren laughed, tossing her highlighted hair. "Emma's being modest. She's very important in her, what do you call it? Tech startup." She made air quotes. "Though I still don't understand what you actually do all day." "She stares at computer screens," my father said. "Not like Lauren here who just made partner at the law firm. Now that's a real achievement." The table erupted in congratulations. Mom actually teared up. Uncle Mike raised his wine glass. My grandmother clutched Lauren's hand like she'd announced a cure for cancer. Lauren had made junior partner at a mid-sized regional law firm. It was a good accomplishment. I was genuinely happy for her. But I'd also been featured in Forbes 30 Under 32 years ago. TechCrunch had called our platform revolutionary. Last month, the U.S. Surgeon General had personally called to thank me for the predictive modeling system that had identified disease outbreaks before they became epidemics. Nobody at this table knew any of that. They'd never asked. "Emma probably makes, what, $40,000 a year?" Uncle Mike said. "These tech things don't pay real money unless you're Zuckerberg." "Mike," my mother said, but she was smiling. "Don't be rude. I'm just saying it's nice that Emma has her hobbies, but Lauren's on track to make $200,000 this year. That's success you can measure." My phone buzzed. A text from Richard Chin, our CEO. "Markets open in 72 hours. You ready to change the world?" My heart rate picked up. I excused myself to the bathroom, closing the door and leaning against it. My reflection stared back. Simple black dress, minimal makeup, hair in a low ponytail. I looked exactly like what my family thought I was. The unsuccessful daughter. The stock options in my portfolio were currently valued at $127 million pre-IPO. Our underwriters were projecting a 40 to 60% pop on opening day. But telling them would mean nothing. They'd find a way to diminish it. When I returned to the table, the conversation had moved to Lauren's upcoming vacation. "Emma, honey," Mom said, her voice taking on that pitying tone. "Do you need money? For rent? I know those startup jobs don't pay much." "I'm fine, Mom. Because Lauren's been so generous helping us with the new roof last year. If you're struggling." I said I'm fine. Uncle Mike snorted. "Pride. That's what keeps people poor. There's no shame in asking for help, Emma." The irony was suffocating. They had no idea I'd anonymously paid off their mortgage 2 years ago through a bank promotion that never existed. "Actually," my cousin Brandon said, "I saw something about a healthcare tech company going public this week. Some record-breaking IPO. You work in healthcare tech, right, Emma?" The table went quiet. Then my father laughed. "Emma's company is tiny, Brandon. The IPOs you read about. Those are the big players. Real companies." "Right," Brandon said, embarrassed. "Sorry, Emma." I smiled. "No worries." What none of them knew was that I'd invited someone to tomorrow's Easter brunch. Someone who'd insisted on meeting the family. Richard Chin was bringing his wife and daughters. And he had no idea he was walking into a family that thought his CTO worked a fake job. Easter Sunday morning arrived with perfect spring weather. I'd barely slept, running scenarios in my head. I arrived at my parents' house at 10. Lauren's Audi was already in the driveway. "Emma." Mom kissed my cheek. "You're early. Can you help Lauren set the table?" "I invited some friends to brunch," I said. "Hope that's okay." Lauren's eyebrow arched. "Friends? You never bring anyone to family things." "Well, they're in town for the holiday. As long as they're not weird tech nerds," Uncle Mike called from the living room. Everyone laughed. At 11 the doorbell rang. Richard Chin stood on the porch with his wife Sandra and their 2 daughters. He wore a casual blazer and held expensive wine. Sandra carried a beautiful orchid arrangement. "Emma." Richard hugged me warmly. Thank you for having us. My mother appeared, her hostess smile in place. Hello. You must be Emma's friends. Richard Chin, he said, shaking her hand. This is my wife Sandra and our daughters Lily and Maya. We work with Emma. Oh, how nice. Mom's smile became slightly more genuine. Come in. In the dining room, introductions were made. I watched my family's faces carefully. Uncle Mike assessed Richard's expensive watch. Aunt Carol noted Sandra's designer handbag. But nobody recognized them. Not yet. So Richard, my father said, what do you do? I'm in healthcare technology, analytics and predictive modeling. Emma and I work together. Ah, Dad said, interest already waning. Tech stuff. It's quite exciting right now, Sandra said. This week is enormous for the company. Oh, Lauren said politely. The IPO, Richard said. We're going public Tuesday morning. Emma's been instrumental in getting us here. Uncle Mike chuckled. IPO? Those are for big companies. Real corporations. This is a real corporation, Sandra said, an edge in her voice. HealthTrack Analytics. Perhaps you've heard of it. Brandon's fork clattered against his plate. Wait, HealthTrack? That's the company going public this week. Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, Richard confirmed. The NASDAQ opening bell. We're expecting it to be the largest healthcare tech IPO in history. The room had gone very quiet. Emma works for HealthTrack? Brandon said. Emma works for you? Works with me, Richard corrected gently. Emma's our chief technology officer. She built the core platform. Without her, there wouldn't be a company to take public. My mother's face had lost color. Lauren was staring at me. Chief technology officer, my father repeated slowly. The youngest C-suite executive in healthcare tech, Sandra added. Forbes featured her 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Richard said. Though the media attention doesn't capture half of what Emma's accomplished. The Surgeon General called her last month. Uncle Mike's wine glass was frozen halfway to his mouth. I'm sorry, Lauren said, her lawyer voice emerging. Emma, you're the CTO of the company going public this week? The one that's been all over financial news. Yes, I said quietly. The projected valuation is what? Sandra looked at Richard. 15 billion on opening day? Conservative estimates say 12 to 15 billion. Though our underwriters think we might hit 18 if the market responds well. Aunt Carol made a small choking sound. Emma, my mother said faintly, why didn't you tell us? Before I could answer, Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. Actually, Emma, I have something for you. I was going to wait until Tuesday, but this seems perfect. He pulled out his tablet and turned it toward the table. It was an email from the NASDAQ. As CEO, I get to choose who rings the opening bell on IPO day, Richard said. Emma, I'd be honored if you do it. You built this company as much as I did. The room was utterly silent. You want Emma to ring the NASDAQ opening bell? Brandon whispered. She deserves it, Richard said. And there's something else. He tapped his tablet again. Emma, I know you don't like to talk about money, but your family should know. He turned the tablet around. It showed a stock option summary with my name at the top. Current estimated value, $127,450,000. Of course that's pre-IPO, Richard said. Based on projected opening price and your vested options, you're looking at somewhere between $250 and $300 million on Tuesday morning. My father's mouth was open. Chilly open. $300 million? Uncle Mike said hoarsely. Give or take, Richard said cheerfully. Though Emma's always been more interested in impact than money. The lives saved, the outbreaks prevented, the healthcare improvements. That's what drives her. Lauren was staring at me with an expression between shock and what might have been respect. Emma's one of the most important people in healthcare technology, Sandra said. We tell everyone that. But she never. Mom trailed off. You never said anything. I looked around the table. At the faces that had dismissed me for years. At Uncle Mike, who'd called my career a waste of time yesterday. At my father, who'd said I stared at computer screens while Lauren did real work. You never asked, I said simply. The rest of brunch was surreal. Suddenly everyone had questions. What exactly did I do? Could Uncle Mike invest? Was I hiring? Lauren sat quietly, her junior partnership suddenly seeming small. My father kept saying, I had no idea, like it was a defense. The information was available, I said. I've been featured in magazines. Company press releases list me. You could have Googled my name any time in the last 4 years. But you never told us, Mom protested. You never wanted to hear it. Every time I tried to talk about work, you changed the subject or made it into a joke. Richard and Sandra exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand the dynamic. After they left, the family sat in uncomfortable silence. Emma, Lauren finally said, I'm sorry. I had no idea you were so successful. Successful, I repeated. I've been successful for years, Lauren. You just didn't think my version of success counted. Uncle Mike cleared his throat. Listen, Emma, about those comments yesterday. You thought I made $40,000 a year. You offered me charity. My mother was crying now. Why didn't you tell us? You should have been proud of me anyway. The money doesn't matter. What matters is that you never once asked about my work or my life. I stood up, gathering my purse. Where are you going? Dad asked. I have interviews tomorrow. Prep work for Tuesday. I paused at the door. You're welcome to watch the opening bell on TV. NASDAQ broadcasts it live. 9:30 a.m. Emma, wait. I've waited. For years I waited for you to see me. To ask about my life. To treat my career as something other than a joke. I looked at each of them. Tuesday morning the whole world is going to know my name. The question is, will you finally be ready to know your daughter? I walked out and didn't look back. On Tuesday morning I stood on the NASDAQ platform in Times Square, my hand on the button that would ring the opening bell. Richard stood beside me, grinning. Ready to make history? He asked. I thought about my family, probably watching from Mom's living room. Watching the Unsuccessful one launch a company into the stratosphere. Ready, I said. The bell rang. Confetti fell. On the enormous NASDAQ screen, our stock price began its climb, $42 opening price, shooting to $67 within the first hour. My phone exploded with messages. Congratulations from colleagues, investors, friends. And one from my mother. We're so proud of you. I didn't respond. Pride wasn't something you got to claim after you'd spent years withholding it. They'd made their choice about who I was, what I was worth. Now they'd have to live with being wrong. Over the following weeks, the media coverage was relentless. My face was on magazine covers. News segments profiled my journey. Investment firms wanted meetings. My family called repeatedly. I answered some calls, let others go to voicemail. Finally, a month after the IPO, I met Lauren for coffee. I've been reading everything about HealthTrack, she said. About what you built. Emma, it's remarkable. Thank you. I'm sorry. Not because you're rich now. Because I spent years dismissing something important to you. I know. Can we fix this? I thought for a long moment. Maybe. But Lauren, it can't be because I'm suddenly wealthy. It has to be because you actually care about me and my work. I do care. I should have shown it before. Yes, you should have. Some relationships couldn't be repaired overnight. Some required rebuilding from scratch. Whether my family and I could do that remained to be seen. But at least now finally they knew the truth. The Unsuccessful one had built something extraordinary, while they weren't paying attention. And maybe that was the greatest success of all, proving to myself that I didn't need their validation to know my worth. The stock market had simply made it impossible for them to ignore anymore.